Welcome back to our Practices for Profit, Dairy Goat seminar. Our next presenter is Larry Hedrich with Quality Dairy Goat Producers Cooperative of Wisconsin. But Larry, you also have a role in LeClaire Creamery, if I'm not mistaken.
Yes, basically, I'm one of the founders at Leclerc Creamery. We felt that back in when we were shipping milk in the early 2000s, that we had nobody in Northeast Wisconsin that was utilizing goat milk. And so we worked towards creating a creamery to make goat cheese. That's what we started with in 2012. And then we now have taken on some partners to work with us because supply of goat milk has been the bane of our existence from day one. But the goat milk also, the challenge is you got to be able to afford to obtain it. And so Northeast Wisconsin being the predominant dairy animal here is the cows. We haven't been able to grow the number of farms here that I actually had anticipated. So we now have a lot of our farms in the western half of Wisconsin, and we're bringing the milk in by the truckload, obviously, from those dairies, and it's worked out well for us. Um, the Quality Dairy Goat Co-op was founded prior to getting involved with Leclerc. Is we felt that we really needed to be able to not be beholden to just one creamery, and so when we founded the co-op, um, we did get an assurance from Car Valley Cheese they would take all the milk that we could produce as long as it met the quality standards when we first got going. And at that time, there actually weren't quality standards out there for goat milk. It were we were paid strictly so much per hundredweight. And so, as our founding principles with the co-op, we put out and working with Sid Cook at Car Valley, um, the butterfat protein somatic cell and plate count. They do follow a lot with cow, but also the regulatory side of goat products. But I can tell you, you can ship legally grade A goat milk at a plate count of 100, and no creamery, grade A, B, anything else wants plate counts of 100. Our ideal ranges, we'd like to see everything in the single digits or 15,000 or less instead of 100,000. And the plate counts, the bacteria are really crucial to the quality of the cheese that is made, um, both shelf life, but really on flavor. When we get plate counts that are going up, that gives us some poor tasting cheese, and then that becomes an issue in the marketplace. On the retail side, people just aren't interested in the American market in off flavored goat cheese. You will get pushback from some of the European markets that it doesn't taste goaty enough, and that's fine and dandy for others. But when we're marketing to the American public, it needs to be different taste than the cow milk, but it needs to be a clean taste. It cannot be barny. You cannot have those goaty type aftertastes that will totally destroy your reputation of the cheese and your entire product line in a heartbeat. So that's how we got going. That was 2005. And we are at a point now, and that was 6 farms. We're over 100 farms now. We ship milk to 13 different facilities that are using it. Anything from we have 1,000-gallon tank that we can get it delivered in, up to the standard quad or semi that delivers. And we very much have worked to tune our deliveries to what the creamery desires. Um, some of them are making mixed milk and only want a small batch at a particular time, or they may have a vat like an 18 or 20,000 pound vat. And so a 50,000 pound load doesn't fit when they want to make an 18,000 pound or two vats, say 36,000 pounds. So tailoring our milk to the needs of the plants has been worked out very well for us for all the time that we've been in business. We are licensed and regulated by the state of Wisconsin. Our farms currently are all in Wisconsin, but we are expand. Well, we do have some farms out of the state, but they are shipping to a certain place at this point that um, it's not falling under the Wisconsin regulatory on that. But we will be working with some of the Iowa farms, and that'll follow right through with all the regulatory on Wisconsin because the milk will be coming here. Um, Everything we do is strictly on above board sales. We don't do anything with running raw milk to anybody that isn't licensed to take the milk and be able to distribute it. There is huge risk we feel to our industry of what is basically looked at as bootleg sales. And when you see different things that are make the newspapers, um, it's always the fear of what's going to take place by somebody not following what the current rules are. So that is crucial to the stability of the industry, is that the farms do things in a legal manner. And animal welfare is also very important to the public. What's important to the public follows directly through the cheese plants and comes down to us is how are we taking care of our animals. We do have a program. In reality, the program itself is pretty much common sense. It's been in place with other creameries since the 90s. Of if we take care of the animals properly, they're going to take care of us. And the farms are visited a couple times a year, both for quality of the milk, but also for animal care to make sure that everybody understands. And really, it's more a discussion than any issues, uh, just to answer questions. And as you heard before, um, the goat world does not have a lot of legal pharmaceutical type products, vaccines, drugs, whatever that can be used. So our farms are required to have a relationship with a veterinarian so that they can access what can help their animals. Um, but that is also part of what's necessary to maintain the legal structure with the government. So there aren't any issues on the milk that we're receiving.
So Larry, it's
As I, yes,
just a kind of a question then is it, as you take a look at different markets around the country and specifically more here in the Midwest, Iowa, Wisconsin, elk, I mean, what is a producer like for the size of a farm that might be viable for somebody to be able to pick up? And how many would you need in a location to actually properly transport it to a processor someplace to make it of value to a processor?
one of the challenges that we run into is picking up milk legally. It has to be, and we operate using PMO as the guidelines. the pasteurized milk ordinance, because everything is well spelled out there. But basically, the transporter has to agitate the tank properly, take a sample, and pump the milk. And that takes, roughly, to do it correctly, 20 minutes per farm, not including travel between farms. So even if the farms are very close together, you still max out at, you can't do more than 3 farms in an hour. The trucking has legal restraints on how many hours a driver can spend on the road. Also, with weather conditions, the truck, we can't have the milk increasing in temperature while it is in the truck, because that will spike our bacteria. And bacteria, as I said before, is a huge issue. So we need to fill a truck from farms that we can maybe stop and pick up 10 to 15 farms in a day. If we're pushing it, we'll maybe grab an extra farm or two. But that requires that the farms are producing enough milk to get, 48,000 pound load at least, amongst those farms, and looking at a 3 to 4 day pickup. And when all the goats are milking, what I call the high season, that's not that hard to get the volume of milk we need to fill the truck, but that's only gonna exist for several months out of the year. And then you've got ramping up to that point as the goats freshen, and ramping down from that point after the goats have been in milk for a while. So really the challenge is trying to assemble enough farms in an area and have the flexibility so we can run milk on a flexible program, so that we can get it picked up, whether it's on the high production area or the low. And we do want our farms producing milk year round. If they are seasonal, what often happens is the milk is most available in the spring, when the creameries actually need the lower volume of milk, and when they need the most. So the late summer into the holiday season of Christmas, we have very little milk available, which makes it really difficult for them to meet their orders, because the majority of the goat cheese goes out as chev, which is the soft cheese. Typically, it's going to have a shelf life. Well, I guess it all depends on the creamery, but it's not a long time. And stores are going to require at least 80% of the available shelf life of the product. So they can't make it 6 months ahead of time and have it sit on the shelf until they need it. It's typically only able to make it a few months ahead of time at best, and typically within a month, so they can ship out as they need it. So that presents a lot of issues. Part of how the plants do cope with it is by freezing the curd. So in spring, they'll take in extra milk, they'll freeze curd and add that into their chev mix later in the year. That can't be done for hard cheese. It can only work for chev. But the problem is cash flow on that, because the creamery is buying all the milk in the early part of the year, and they're not able to sell it until the second half of the year. So getting farms that are big enough to make it work, and then also having enough cash flow on the farm. We had worked with Larry Trennell to do some farm surveys earlier this year. So all of you should have access to pretty accurate information to work with about the financial viability of farms. I know one of the farms in the survey was showing good profitability. They only had a little over 100 animals, but typically it's going to run around 200 in order to get the volume of milk that we need in a truck to to produce the pickups that we need to fill that truck. A lot of our farms are in that 2 to 350 animal range. A few are larger than that. And there are a number of farms, quite a number that we work with that are Amish farms, and they maybe are only pushing between 75 and 100 animals. But there is some canned milk collection that goes on where they collect on a regular basis, taking it to a dump station. And what we still are looking at with that scenario is keeping the plate counts down so that it's in that 15,000 or less. It absolutely can be done with cans. It all is about what the protocols are and procedures are to get the milk collected and into a dump station that has cooling with bulk tanks. And then the truck can go there to pick up and make that scenario work so that we can pick up from small farms that way. But you need to follow all the regulations of any other dairy farm to be able to do that with cans. And typically, the goat industry is taking the milk for grade B milk, so cans are legit for that. There's only a small amount of the goat milk that's used for grade A. And that's where our co-op has really been able to grow, is by pooling these different types of milk from different areas, whether it's from conventional farms, Amish farms, through a dump station, um, or serving the creameries by delivering less than full loads because they want a specific amount to meet their needs. That's been our ongoing process, and we continue to grow that way. Our never ending struggle is to attempt to try to hold the trucking costs down, because the creamery will only pay a certain amount for the milk. Whether it goes to the trucker or to the farmer isn't as much of the issue. It's how much the milk it costs when it hits the door at the creamery. Once it goes through the valve there, that's where the critical factor is. How much is that milk costing them, because they have to compete out in the retail market with everybody that brings in milk from all different types of farms. And so they're limited in what they can offer for price to a farm. If too much of it is eaten up in hauling, that erodes what a farm can do. And then that creates a non-profitable situation for the farm. Through the years, we've also seen quite a bit of people getting in to the goat industry thinking that this is lucrative because they attempt to equate the dollar per hundredweight that they're going to get with the dollar per hundredweight that a cow farm gets. And because they're getting more than double, they believe that they're going to succeed in the goat world because it's a lot more money. The reality is, if you look at it, stand back a little bit and think, in the cow world, you've got a cow and a calf. In the goat world, to get that same volume of milk, you probably have 10 milk goats and 20 babies to deal with. So you've got 30 to handle. A cow farmer has 2. So the labor needs are completely different on a goat dairy, and how everybody handles those and works with their goats. Typically, it's important in a commercial setup that you can work with animals in a group basis versus individual basis, because you just don't have time to spend with many different goats every single day and survive through having a life for yourself also.
Larry,
Yes.
you've talked about co-op dealing with producers. Is there a model out there that has co-op to co-op relationships? And obviously we're here in Western Iowa, and I'm thinking if we had a co-op, a milk co-op here, would they be able to do business with your co-op?
It's something that I am not aware of at this point. We are one of the few co-ops that have been around for an extended period of time in the goat world that I'm aware of. And most of the time it is a group of farms, a co-op that is working directly with a specific creamery. Um, in our instance, it has worked better for us to work with numerous creameries, and we have the different places we work with use the milk for many different things, whether it's an aged cheese, a mixed milk cheese, a fresh cheese, any of those different types of things. And there are other products that are also being that the milk is also being used for, and it has worked out well because we have the flexibility. We're dealing with multi-million pounds of milk in a year, and so by having the different outlets, it has allowed us to schedule to keep all these different entities in the milk that they need relatively close to when they need it. Um, and I think that's been our recipe to succeed and continue in business. And it all depends on the quality of the milk coming off the farm. We actually, as a co-op, are strictly a marketing entity. We do not manufacture any products ourselves. Our goal from day one has been to do the marketing for the farms, not to invest in capital investments, of a creamery or trucks or anything else. We subcontract out anything that we need to do, such as the milk hauling.
My expertise, if you will, is on milk marketing, and I can bore you with the milk cow industry. Basically, we're looking at, what are the component products worth? What's the cheese worth? Then we have the formula, and I can backtrack that and say, okay, 3.5 butterfat milk, that portion's worth this price, the protein's worth this price, the skim's worth this price, and that's how we set the price for this month's milk or next month's milk. How do you go about just finding that price for the goat milk industry?
Essentially, it's been using what was paid previously and trying to build on that. It's not as, I would say, scientific as it is in the cow world. We don't have markets such as for skim milk, for powdered milk, for many things like that. Essentially, what happens with us is we are dealing with incoming curd out of Europe that has a huge impact on what our creameries are able to pay for the milk, because most of the industry the creameries are multinationally owned, so they have direct ties to Europe or Canada, and therefore they can bring curd in to temper what we always say to dilute our good Wisconsin milk to make an acceptable product price for what they're selling it in the retail world. Um, it's kind of worked that the creameries don't lay a lot of extra dollars at the farm door until the milk supply becomes an issue for them. And when they realize they have to have more milk, then the farms get paid a little better and we see an expansion in the milk supply.
Help me understand, is the world market is American goat milk a bargain or an excise taxed item?
Um, I guess I would say we're kind of in the middle of the world with that. The curd from Europe, the the really cheap curd typically is off flavor and is not going to make good cheese. So it's not attractive in the American market. Uh, the the quality curd that is available, and there is quality curd available that can be and is brought into the United States by the container load every year, a lot of it. And with that, it really depends on the blending of what they're going to do. A lot of that is going into the food service market because they can't use that curd for hard cheeses. It can only be used in the chev. And so it's going to be used a lot. And that's where probably 90% or better of the goat cheese ends up is food service of one type or another. The chev product, at least, maybe not all food service. Um, but that's where we try to work with our farms of negotiating with the creamery to see what we can get for a price to be able to have our farms show a profit at the end of the year.
So Larry, if you take a look at some of the prices like on the East Coast, the West Coast, it just seems like some of the processors, they must have a bigger demand. I know it takes a while or takes some money to move the cheese, to move the milk and things like that. But if you look at the crystal ball thought of the next, 2 to 5 years of dairy goat prices on the farm, what would you say compared to what they are right now?
Well, it seems the price of goats themselves is going up. I do believe the price of the milk is going to need to continue to rise. When I got into it, we are back in the 20s. And so, I mean, it's changed quite a bit, but that's been a lot of years. So I believe we'll be able to continue seeing incremental changes in the price, but a lot of it is going to depend for the farm profitability on what the farm can do for creating efficiencies on their feed or their labor. Um, that's going to be roughly 75% of your cost between those two. And what they can do to source the, a good quality feed, and then also to work with efficient movement of the goats in the barn, whether it's kidding time. And that's where I do talk about to our farms that by kidding year round, they can stabilize their labor so they don't have these huge spikes where they need so much help for a really short period of time and then lose everybody and start over again the next year. Uh, so I think that's part of it is just working on continuing to get more efficient because we're not going to most likely, I don't believe, at least we'll get a huge increase in milk price. I think it'll be incremental at best.
So when you take a look at, I mean, you've been in the industry for quite a few years, been on both the production side, the processing side. Anything in that financial study that surprised you?
No, I don't think so. I think it reinforced what we thought is farms can make money milking goats, but there's no guarantee they're going to make money milking goats. It depends on the efficiency of what they're doing on that particular farm. And it's going to be difficult making any money with less than 100 goats. Um, the one farm that was in that slightly over 100 range, I guess I would look at that as literally more an anomaly. Um, I congratulate them for being profitable with that number of goats. But the challenge is it takes more goats, and when you have more goats, um, to create that cash flow for the farm, that's where I say working with groups becomes critical. If you're going to do everything one goat at a time, there aren't enough hours in a day.
Yeah, and I think as we start taking a look at some of the farms that were in that study, One of the biggest things that came back is just, yeah, if they're going to be that small, they better have some genetic sales. They better have some income coming in from other pieces of the, whether it be the goat business or something else, or it's just a part-time job. But I think the genetic sales has actually came through several of the higher profit ones that they not only are making profit milking them, but they've got the genetics that other people want and they can buy as well.
Yeah, and I think as some of your other speakers have talked about, and the health of those animals, having a clean herd, CAE free, CL free, things like that. Those are things that I've talked about for better than 20 years. And location is critical. If you're miles and miles away from another goat farm, it's going to be extremely difficult to be able to get on a route unless you happen to be lucky enough that there's a group beyond you and the truck has to drive past you in order to get to the creamery.
I'm still trying to get a way that Western Iowa can play in this market. It sounds like it's not a cooperative to cooperative thing. What about a collection point? In the old days, we called them a dump station, where you'd bring milk in and they'd come every other day or whatever and pick it up. Is that model still functional in the world?
Yes, we do work with a dump station like that with several groups, several communities of Amish farms, and that milk is coming in by cans and going to the dump station. They're basically picking up every other day to get it there. It's getting into the bulk tank. That way, there's enough collected that we can have a truck go in there and either get a full load out or at least a good percentage of a load so that then they can stop at some of our other farms on the way. And that's how we build a route to make it work. Um, it becomes very challenging right now, this time of the year, just getting enough milk to keep those trucks full because it costs just as much to run the truck, whether it's full or half full. And so that's really a bite to the cost of bringing that cheese or that milk in for cheese is if there aren't enough, if the farms are not producing enough volume. You can run two trucks when it's busy, but if you can't get one full, it just doesn't work uh, to keep the money flowing. Uh, and that's why trying to get the more farms doing a good job of year round. And really, the year round is very dependent on the management of the farm. There's not It's not like, oh, I can't possibly do it. It's a matter of managing the farms to make it work. There's some Amish farms that do a good job of milking year round. There's regular farms, conventional farms that are doing a good job of milking year round. Is it absolutely equal month to month to month? No, it still drops off some, but not a drop. I've got some other farms that go dry on us, and that really is a detriment to trying to get enough milk uh, to make the hauling viable.
Larry, any other questions or anything
Uh,
you want to say to kind of your final comments?
well, I think a huge thing that has seemed to work through the years is even if a place isn't viable to ship today, things change. And so maybe 2 years from now, there's a new neighbor or there's a group of farms that are pooling together their thoughts and ideas, and they do want to put together an appropriate number of goats and come up with a game plan. Um, the program that you seem to have in Iowa today with a viable extension scenario to work with the small farms and help them to get to a place where they have to be, whether it's growing or working together, whatever it is, I think is huge. And that's something I think that the farms do want to take advantage of is working with the extension agents. Because you guys get around to a lot of different places and see different ideas and have training that a farmer really has trouble trying to find time to do.
Dr. Tranel, any last questions?
No, I was just kind of thinking of his last comment there. Yeah, there's a couple of the farms that really didn't care to have me come to do a financial analysis. But after you kind of show them what we can do and kind of work down through and tell them what this issue and that issue is, I had a couple where it's tough to get off the farm. So I do think that as we take a look at some of the states that have, just really kind of wrapped their arms around the dairy goat extension. I mean, Iowa State University has definitely been very supportive, and our dairy team has definitely been very proactive in trying to work with it. So yeah, if people have questions, don't be afraid to come to us. If we don't know the answer, we know a lot of people that hopefully do.
We've got Larry's number on speed dial now. So,
Yeah. Which Larry?
well, Larry Hedrich,
We're Larry Squid, yeah.
we sure enjoyed this conversation, and it made me think about some things that may help our folks here in Western Iowa. If we can get them to move to that next step and produce more quality milk. We've got the health folks around us who can help keep animals cooking. We've got some of the best feed growers in the world, so they certainly won't, lack for quality feed. And we have water. When I look at some of the Western states, as corny as it sounds, water is becoming a huge issue. So thank you very much for your time. Any last words?
No, thank you. And like you said, willing to always discuss things with you and see if an opportunity can present itself to become viable.
Fantastic. Thank you. And we will close out with that and be just a little bit before we have our next presenter.